Hello foresty friends, today is a bit of a different video and one that I've been meaning to experiment with for a while now. If you watch my Arknights videos, you might know that I love me a good narrative, and because of my growing interest in visual novels, I've also been getting back into normal physical book novels. You know, the ones made from paper. Shocking, I know. I enjoy talking about the stories I like, and some of y'all seem to enjoy listening to them for whatever reason. Hey, if you want to fill the silent void of the ramblings of a barely even 20-year-old, then be my guest. I can't judge. I really enjoy listening to videos about books. The most popular ones I think y'all would know are Read with Cindy, Dominique, and Crimson Rouge, so I've always wanted to try reviewing a novel myself. This also gives me a chance to kind of record my feelings and thoughts on any of the books that I finish. Plus, as someone that also likes to read, I feel like I can learn a lot from these books as well. Not only that, but I think it would also give me a chance to tell more people about certain Malaysian indie works. I think there's a lot of creative people in this hellhole of a country, and I wouldn't mind using this type of video as an extra excuse to seek out more local writers and creatives. Support local and all that. What novel did I choose to start this series with? Unless you clicked on this video without reading the title somehow, it's Nirnama, written by Hilal Ashraf. I got Nirnama after Limar V, a Malaysian VTuber, told me that she was reading it while I was live, twitch.tv/autumns_eclipse, and that reminded me of the good things I heard about Nirnama, at least when it was first released in 2023. So I bit the bullet and paid the 50 plus ringgit on it. Plus, a good chunk of the art was done by Nenek Hani, who is a god, sorry, I can say that, who's very good at the thing she does. I didn't know who Hilal Ashraf was prior to this novel. According to his website, he does a lot of stories themed around Islam and faith and romance, and yeah, those just weren't the types of books I would have read if I was any younger. As a kid, I was more of a Tia Stilton girly, so I didn't know who he was. But if Mr. Ashraf is watching this video for some reason, hey man, I'm sorry. Before I review the book, there are count them, three pieces of context that I'd like for y'all to know before we proceed. It's kinda important to let y'all know what I'm thinking while doing this, and it'll give a clue as to how much this video is gonna cover on Nirnama. So I'd appreciate it if you could take the time to listen for a second. I know y'all are just drawing or doing some other inane chore with this video on anyway, so do me a solid here, alright? First is, hi, hello. I'm Malay Muslim, or at least on paper. I'm not a very good Muslim. I actually don't have a very good relationship with Islam in general. I had one good ustazah who I adored a lot, and is the only reason why I honestly still involve myself with Islamic practices, even after her retirement. But the other people who were supposed to teach me Islam, my parents, my other ustaz and ustazah, and my peers, they weren't the best people for me to learn from. They hurt a lot of people, and because of that, I for a long time associated Islam with that kind of past. In addition, I studied in MRSM, which, if you know about that kind of environment, you know that it's a very toxic place that uses Islam to perpetuate its toxicity. Yeah, this is where that part of the YouTube title comes from. This is kinda important since Islamic themes is a huge part of Hilal Ashraf's works, and I want that to at least be acknowledged before y'all start listening to some rando's opinion. However, I will still try to read Nirnama in good faith. I have consumed and enjoyed a lot of media that contained religious themes before, and I aim to do that again many times. A lot of stuff actually has a lot of religious influence. That's kind of what happens when one of the two most influential books are the Al-Quran and the Bible, you know? The one with Jesus in it. So, just to let y'all know of my potential biases, I think those are important things to consider in this review, thought, video, whatever this is supposed to be. The second piece of context is that I've read both the Malay and English version of this book. A lot of my thoughts have been formed even after I finished the Malay version of Nirnama, and there are still some differences and bits of the English version that I'll probably be touching on. I won't go into a deep dive of the differences between the two, but it did feel slightly different to be reading one or the other. At the end, I'll be talking about which version is better, and if you're a sexy bilingual like me, which one you should get in my opinion. The last piece of context, and this is thankfully a lot shorter, I'm only talking about the base vanilla book of Nirnama. I'm not touching on the extra content from the prequel or the information book. Whatever additional knowledge is in those that would coincidentally fix or invalidate my critique on the characters or story will simply not be acknowledged. I'm reviewing this one thing. Whatever else is there, I'm just gonna pretend doesn't exist. Though I will say I have read the prequel as of recording this video, but I will still be looking at this novel as if it was its own standalone thing, just because even the author admits in the prequel that it was meant to be just that. I don't really think there's much that changes from my initial script either way. I don't know, maybe I'll make a YouTube short after this one to touch on it a little bit. Whether or not you think Nirnama is bad or good from this video, of course I would still recommend you to buy the book yourself if you want to have a properly formed opinion on it. I would recommend anyone to support Malaysian art. The link to buy the book in English and Malay, because yes, those are the only two translations that are available right now, will be in the description below. Hilal Ashra also provides the first 5 chapters of Nirnama available on his website, so if you want to read that before you buy this book, I'll link that as well. The free chapters are only Malay though. If you can't understand Malay, tough titties. So let's get into it, eh? Let's fucking go! So the way I want to structure this is that I'll begin with an introduction of the important characters and then a general recap of the entire Nirnama novel. I won't go into detail, obviously, this book is almost 700 pages long, but it'll be detailed enough to recap so you won't feel completely lost. While recapping, I'll also be pointing out some notes or thoughts I have about the specific plot point or characters that appears. A lot of this novel is built on a lot of references to old Malaysian mythology and folklore, which is another thing Hilal Ashraf enjoys, it seems. So I'll also explain the meme whenever it happens. And then at the end, I'll be talking about the things I liked and the things I disliked, followed by a section dedicated to a specific character that I really enjoy, and then my conclusion and self-reflection. So, without further ado, let's actually start. Let's start with the basics. This is Nirnama, our main character, our boy. He's super religious and faithful and is basically never wrong on something and never really loses. We'll talk about this more later. Nirnama literally means nameless, just straight up nothing, literally. If I had to give an example, it's like a version of Wuyo. We don't know his real name until later. It's a bit of a big spoiler. Nadim, or Sang Kencil, our first obvious reference to a Malaysian folklore story based on, well, Sang Kencil, a character commonly used in fairy tales where he gets in and out of situations because of his silliness. Nadim is mischievous and witty like the character, and he follows Nirnama to learn how to be strong like him. He's the little brother, comedic relief, and also surprisingly the straight man as well in some situations. As a heads up, in the story, they gave him an arc where he goes from being someone that believed in the power of ancestors and spirits to a full-on Muslim, and I'll be talking about how they handle that. This is Cendana, a Srikandi, female warrior, that wants to be the greatest for the sake of herself and her kingdom. She wanted to defeat Nirnama at first, but then they got a little bit closer and now she doesn't want to kill him. How very sweet! They also had an arc that covers the sexism because she wants to prove that women are better than men so that they won't be seen as just the objects of men's desires. I'll go into this mess later as well. This is Jagat Suchi. He's the evil wizard ruler of the world during the novel, and his whole thing is drinking people's blood to stay younger. He's so slay. His main assistant by his side is Nujum Surya, an old sorceress. I don't refer to her a lot in my recap, but she's there just so you know. Laksamana Jibat, Laksamana Kasturi, and Laksamana Tuha, and to Nirmala, I guess. These guys are the Hang Tuah reference. Kinda, sorta, we'll get into it. Hang Tuah is a legendary figure of the manuscript Hikayat Hang Tuah, which was said to be started in the 1700s and was completed in the mid-1800s. And Hilal Ashraf does actually do something pretty cool with this, especially if you're somebody that's really into Malaysian myths and folklore. So, the basic story is this. We start with a flashback of a boy burying 522 graves. Okay, that might be too far back. What a way to start. You need help there, dude? Actually, the start of the story is Nirnama saving Nadim from being killed as a result of their team up to get some big man out of his palace so that the kingdom that exposes Jagat Suchi's rule, Semuta Putih, can easily advance on it. Nirnama kills the guy and then Nadim wants to follow him to learn how to be stronger. Another big man surprises Nirnama and Nadim while they're talking about praying to fight Nirnama. And at this point, Nadim prays to his ancestors and spirits to help Nirnama, which he and the big man call him a Jahlil and Mushrik, and this is the first kind of a character arc that we're going to be seeing in relation to Nadim, and I'm gonna get to this, I promise. The first paragraph, and there's already something I gotta note. Anyways, surprise, surprise, the big man was just Laksamana Jibat, someone who knew Nirnama since student years, who wanted to give Nirnama a wooden thing and pieces out. Nirnama and Nadim go to a nearby bayport to get on a big boat to Sarawak. Some big men are causing problems for a big boatman though, so Nirnama has to kill them, all while being watched by a beautiful woman. I guess some of us are just into different things. The big boatman is named Tanggang, another Malaysian folklore reference. He appreciates the help, and after Nirnama shows him the wooden thing Jabat gave him, he lets him on the boat for free, and in first class as well. Even though they get some boat luxuries, Nirnama is notably refusing. He's like sleeping on the floor with a cloth, even though they gave them beds. Hey, I hear it's good for the back, I guess. This is actually going pretty well so far. Maybe this journey won't be so bad. Hey, my name Miss Chandana. I want to kill you. Oh, a business opportunity. So Tanggang wants Nirnama to fight to entertain the guests, and Chudana suggests he fights her. After some totally ethical persuasion via Tanggang threatening to throw Nadim off the boat, he is a businessman after all, they agree to do it. This is the part where I complain a little bit as an appetizer for what I will rant about in the critique section. So as previously mentioned, Chandana is doing this whole thing because she wants to be the greatest Srikandi. One of the reasons she wants to fight Nirnama is actually kind of funny. She's just really annoyed that people kept asking if she fought Nirnama yet, so she wants to fight him to prove that she is the greatest. The other reason is a bit less funny. She wants to prove that women are better and they are more than accessories for men by becoming the best female warrior. And I don't know how to feel about the handling of this. Because Chindana and Nirnama fight, right? And in the span of a chapter, she goes from being super stubborn about her views on this specific thing to just completely dropping it after Nirnama defeats her in a fight and told her some Al-Quran lines during it. And no, listen, Hilal Ashraf, if you're still watching, I get it. You're a man. I am too. Still an ex-woman though, and I need to tell you this. This doesn't look the best. I know this is gonna sound hilarious, especially after a few more chapters, but it feels so unrealistic. Chandana was demonstrably really stubborn in her stance of wanting to prove that women are superior, and the reasoning for it is revealed later into the novel, and it's kinda sad. And seeing it be resolved in a chapter makes it feel like that aspect of a character isn't really being taken all that seriously. And especially since misogyny and sexism against women is a huge topic of discussion in Islamic spaces, it's kinda annoying. I don't want to assume Mr. Ashraf's intent here, but this feels more like the topic's being brought up because, one, I guess it has to because Chindana is the only female character in the main cast, and two, it's more for showing how great Nirnama is instead of using it to flesh out Chindana's character. I could be wrong, it's brought up at the end again, and I'll talk about that, but in the middle, I don't think it's ever explored again meaningfully. And in some ways, I'm grateful, but a part of me wished this topic wasn't brought up at all because Chindana's lack of self-esteem was already a good enough motivation for her character. I don't know, I can still respect Hilal Ashraf for trying to talk about it, but again, as an ex-woman, I feel like I can still say it's a kinda clumsy. It's not that what Nirnama is saying is wrong per se, it's just that the context and pacing is not the greatest. To spin it this way, this is a scene where a woman is telling a man that women experience sexism, and the man responds by going, well, the Al-Quran says men and women are equal, so I don't know what you're complaining about. Completely forgetting that not every man is as virtuous as him. Like, people whistled when Chindana was called onto the fighting arena, dude. I know men are capable of writing about female suffering. Princess Utena was written and directed by men, and that anime is treated like it's the Kami Sutra of LGBT feminists. I know we can do better than this. This all ties to one major problem I have with the entire novel as a whole, but we'll get there. Man, I'm sounding really negative in the beginning here. I promise I have good things to say, it's just that the problems I have are really prevalent in the early chapters. Anyways, yes, Nirnama defeats Chindana after a pretty cool fight scene, but comforts her in the end, which is kinda sweet. The big boat gets close to docking, and oh boy, Nirnama and Nadim are talking about the existence of Allah versus the existence of spirits and ancestral beliefs, and I just finished ranting about Chindana. I'll talk about Nadim's whole thing later. Speaking of Chindana, she joins them and legitimately has a pretty nice interaction with Nadim and Nirnama. Well, mostly with Nadim, but you get it. Nirnama was too busy looking at the ocean after Chindana was being too pretty by smiling. This is also the part where we learn about Sarawak. Basically, it's being ruled by two princesses, Princess Senjinjang and Princess Atumbong. They're a reference to the folklores associated with the real mountains with those same names, and just like the story, they're both currently in civil war because they both like the same man, Prince Serapi. Ah, a tale as old as time. How sad. Princess Santunjung is currently holding a competition to find warriors to help her with a battle with her sister. Chandana is there to participate in the event because, of course, she was. Tanggang joins in to give them a bag of money. Nirnama wants to decline, but Nadim silently tells him to feck off. We learn that Tanggang lived in Sarawak and that he's happy to let them join them again. Clearly, because he made a lot of money from the Chindana and Nirnama fight. Nirnama is not very happy. They get off the big boat, and then Chindana's like, so, can I join you guys? No, hush, I like her, we're taking her. I vote yes! Before Nirnama can complain again, some old people run up to Tanggang with some food, claiming to be his parents. Clearly the highest of infractions, because Tanggang threw the food away. Hey! Mambazia malang shaitan! And tells them to get lost. The old woman was like, in the name of Allah, I curse you to turn into stone! And I guess the ultimate big man upstairs was like, I bet, and then... and then... Tanggang just turned into stone! No, this is a very serious situation, I promise. Just give me a minute. So, so Nirnama unstones him after praying to Allah and then allows Chindana to follow them. After another flashback, we get back to our trio walking to Sarawak. While discussing Nirnama's motives for being here, Nadim gets distracted by coconuts because he has an attention span of a hamster, and Chindana then stresses onto Nirnama that she wants to be by his side, and he blushes because he's a bitch. Thankfully, Nadim's coconut distraction wasn't a complete tangent because we then get to meet Mat Jinin, another character in Malaysian folklore often in stories about having unrealistic dreams that may or may not have been twisted by colonizers to prevent revolution. In this novel, though, he helps with revolution. Majinin is telling people that maybe, and this is just a thought, that perhaps Prince Rapi might not be a great person because, the entire kingdom has been stuck in war and chaos ever since he arrived. The trio overhears this and is like, oh, tell us more of these totally crazy daydreams, dude. After everyone in the coconut stall leaves, Majinin tells them that Prince Rapi might be a sorcerer because Majinin would spy on him sometimes, and so far he has seen him talk to ravens that come to him and leave at his request, and mysterious smoke coming out of his palace. Virgin women in Prince Rapi's area have also been disappearing, so major signs of sihir there. Thankfully, Prince Rapi was going to leave his palace soon, and he's going to visit a village in his area. The trio now get horses, horsey. And they get there, and yep, those ravens just turned into panthers. Prince Rapi enters the village with a horse, and then that horse goes insane for a bit, and Nadim goes down to comfort it. Little did Prince Rapi know it was all a trick to distract him while Nirnama was reciting some Alquran and stuff, and whoops, now the panthers are snakes and are going insane. The snakes tried to kill Prince Rapi, but he blew it away, but whoopsie, his face kinda turned old for a split second. What are you looking at? After confirming that, Nadim and Jinin go to register Nirnama and Chindana into the competition. Nirnama and Chindana spend some time not talking to each other about their past. Something I've been skipping in this recap have been flashbacks that happen mid-chapter. Sometimes these flashbacks are used to relate to something happening in the present of the story, and I actually quite like how these flashbacks are used. There's one moment I especially like that I'll talk about later. For the first few chapters, you get flashbacks to when a bunch of kids accidentally let out Jagat Suchi in his imprisonment. This is basically Nirnama's backstory and how he got involved in this mess. I won't go into it for spoiler and time reasons, but it's pretty cool. Anyways, they get into the competition, and despite the fact that they had rules, Nirnama suggested to Princess Santubong that the 98 other warriors just fight him and Chindana at the same time. She then lets them do that, and Chindana and Nirnama win! Well, more like Chindana in the end surrenders to Nirnama because there can only be one winner. Boo! Fight again! And Nirnama is now free to tell her that the guy that she really likes and has been going to war over for the past while was actually a sorcerer and sent by Jagat Suchi to ruin her and her kingdom. So Nirnama, Chindana, Nadim, and Mat Jinin get arrested, and now Princess Santubong is walking them with her army to Prince Rapi's palace for punishment. It's not all bad. Mat Jinin converts to Islam and gets a new name, except it is a bit bad because Princess Sejinjang's army attacks them, and she's here with Prince Rapi. Nirnama recites some verses, and Prince Rapi reveals to be one ugly dude. Rip. A fight happens, Sejinjang and Santubong make up during it, but then Prince Rapi brings out 3 big ol' snakes to kill Nirnama, the princesses, and Chindana. And then Nirnama kills the snakes. Yippee! Serapi tries to threaten them by taking Sejinjang hostage, and then we get the best paragraph in the novel here. No need, Princess Sejinjang interrupted Jalak Bentala's voice. Dear Kakanda Satumbong, we are 2 young women seeking love. Our father's love for us has made us desire a husband who possesses his strength and vitality. But love has blinded us. She looked at Princess Santubong with teary eyes. What do you desire to do, dear Adinda Sejinjang? Dear Kakanda Santubong, I am the worst. I have already obtained the love that I longed for, yet I yielded to oppress you. I should make amends for my own wrongdoings. I pray that the spirits of the Sarawak Kingdom mountains will purify my transgressions. Let me perish. After that, slay this cursed sorcerer. Princess Sejinjang turned around and spat at Jalak Bentala. The sorcerer was shocked and stared at the back of her head with intense hatred. Yeah, girl! Get him! Anyways, he dies and the day is saved. Yippee! The princess and their armies convert to Islam and we all live happily ever after. I'm just kidding. We still have 300 plus pages of this book left. The trio goes to Malacca and sees Jabat, and he has amazing news that their sole ruler Semuta Putih, Sultan Mahmud, has fallen in love and possibly getting married with a woman that's been appearing in his dreams, with some conditions that include barrels of blood and tears, which does not sound very Islamic. Now that sounds more like sihir. Again? You guys really got to stop falling in love with mountain people that are involved with our realm. We get introduced to Laksamana Tuha, another dude that has known Nirnama and Jabat since student years. And also, my favorite character. We also meet Tun Nirmala, just some old dude. So this part is where I interject with something that I really like about Nirnama, that just being how I like how wholesome the interactions between the characters are. At some point, Nirnama, Jabat, and Tuha catch up by sparring, and it's pretty sweet to see the usually uptight Nirnama getting surrounded by his chiller kakandas. However, the main relationship I like seeing the most in this entire novel is Nirnama, Cendana, and Nadim. Because of my particular background, some of the ways these three interact with each other reminds me of some of the more positive experiences I've had in regards to my religion, that being my ustaza. Seeing Nirnama and giving advice to Nadim and seeing the tree pray together made me think back to when my ustaza did that, and it successfully tugged at my heartstrings. Damn you, Hilal Ashraf! And okay, fine, I also just really like little sibling, older sibling dynamics, okay? And their particular group chemistry tickles me in a way that I wish was explored more. Nadim called Nirnama and Cendana his older siblings at some point, and that perhaps warmed up my cold, cold heart. Fuck you. I'll go into more detail with it later, but I really wish the book would have more moments of just these three hanging out and solving people's problems together. Anyways, that aside, they travel to the Sultan Mahmud's palace and find out that the kingdom isn't really doing so hot because the Sultan's too busy chasing Magic Mountain Cooch. After some stalling, they all get to meet Sultan Mahmud and they have to go see the Mountain Magic Lady to get a better grasp of the situation. All the while, Tuha is being strangely aggressive even at the Mountain Princess's palace. Chill, dude. Maybe it's got something to do with the sihir you've been doing recently. Don't look at me like that, you literally don't even hide it! Anyways, we meet Mount Ladang Princess, and Tunamala has some soldiers present some nice, pretty, shiny gifts, and it's like, hey, can we, like, not have to give you barrels of blood and tears for your marriage with the Sultan? And she's like, how dare you? I'm a goddess. Which, well, know your worth, girl, but that's not how that works here. Before Tuha loses his lid with anger, the last Laksamana we haven't seen yet, Kastri, yeah, remember him from the character intros, bursts into the palace with some great news. Just kidding, Jagatsuchi army is at the northern borders of the Samutapute kingdom right now! Sultan Mama and Tuha don't care though. Damn. They all have to proceed without Tuha's army, even though his army is the biggest, so it's gonna be a bit difficult. Which is why Nirnama has to travel for a bit to look for help from his old master, Adiwaja. Master, Jagatsuchi is at our borders. Sultan Mahmud has fallen in love with a woman who claims to be a goddess and Tuha did sihir, so our armies are really weak right now. What do we do? Nirnama has to go see his eldest Kakanta, Aladdin, to convince him to come back after he hid himself in a cave since shortly before his father passed away, because he's the actual heir of Samutapute, and if he comes back then Sultan Mahmud's power goes to him, and Tuha will listen to him. Hopefully. Aladdin doesn't want to, even after sparring and Nirnama trying to talk him out of it. I won't go into detail about the interaction here because it is actually one of my favorite chapters, but the gist of it is that Aladdin hid in a cave so that he can ascend to a higher being using Islam and abandoning all worldly responsibilities to just focusing on Allah, even abandoning his inheritance to the throne and the fight against Jagatsuchi. The conflict itself is pretty great. Aladdin's actions seem virtuous on the surface, but in reality it's hurting him and the people around him. As someone that had to deal with people like Aladdin, it felt pretty cathartic to see Nirnama break down and reject this logic, not in spite of being Muslim, but because of it. It's my favorite chapter, but I found myself skipping it in my rereads because the memories it reunites are just too intense. Anyways, Aladdin still doesn't agree to come back, so Nirnama has to come up with another plan. While returning home, some fucking dude named Sang Kalimbai, another myth reference, tries to kill him and obviously fails, but not without telling Nirnama the reason why Tuha is acting the way he is. See, Tuha has actually fallen in love with Mount Ladang Princess who was sent by Jagatsuchi to create chaos. Tuha was actually going to kill Sultan Mahmud to win the people's favor after the neglect the Sultan has been doing and be crowned as new Sultan of the Samutapute and Ujong. And then Jagatsuchi's power to those areas can be re-established. So, not the best thing to hear? At least this journey wasn't a complete waste. Nirnama comes back while Jibat, Sultan Mahmud and Tuha are arguing and just dumps all of that on them. Tuha doesn't really react the best way to all of that and fucking jumps him. And while all of that is happening, Aladdin comes back because actually he was convinced by Nirnama's words and he's here to reclaim the throne. Phew. Royal family drama is tough. Tuha and Nirnama fight. Mountain Princess comes down to help Tuha, which proves Tuha's and the princess's relationship. The power returns to Aladdin, and oop, if the stakes aren't high enough for you, Jagatsuchi has arrived at the borders and killed the front line with just a wave of his hand. Oopsie, Daddy's home. Nirnama and Aladdin fight Tuha and Mountain Princess, and when it's clear that Nirnama and Aladdin were winning, the princess kills Tuha. Rip to a bad bitch, we lost the real one. Nirnama was then given Tuha's Kiris, the Taming Sari, which is the final clue of many to what Nirnama's real name is. I won't spoil it here, but I'll reveal it once I talk about Tuha and his character arc. I actually have a lot of thoughts about Tuha, and I will get into it much later, but I will say that I felt a deep connection with him as somebody with religious trauma, and I have my own interpretation of his character. Tuha's character arc was about finding strength outside of Islam, and as you'd imagine, that really resonated with me, especially with all the parallels he had with Alauddin and Nirnama. But we don't have time for that right now. Jagat is trying to kill Kasri and Chandana. Everyone gathers and goes to deal with a sorceress, Nujum Surya, you remember her, while Adi Wajah deals with Jagat Suchi. The Sarawak Kingdom army also joins the fray, and the MVP, Muhammad Jinin, is there! Woo! Go, baby! After a pretty good fight, Adi Wajah kills the Jinn that keeps Jagat Suchi invincible, but not without getting a fatal wound himself. Jagat and Nujum Surya retreat, and everyone mourns for the loss of their master. I guess fuck Tuha, I guess. Also, by the way, Chindana is a princess of the Moonlight Bay. I'm being so serious. Chindana being a princess is just kind of dropped at the start of chapter 24, 500 plus pages into this book. I'm sure it's been hinted at throughout, but this is the first time people properly acknowledge it. And it's right after Adi Wajah dies, so it's a bit of a funny whiplash of mood and tone. Because of Jaga's retreat, everyone takes a bit of a detour to prepare for the eventual rematch. Nirnama has to go kill a big guy, and Chindana is gonna go rally up her country's army to help with the fight. Also, Chindana and Nirnama ponder about getting married of each other, which, guys, I swear to God, you humans just jump for any chance of romance, huh? Shut up. Anyways, this means Chindana and Nirnama have to split up for a while, with Nadim following Nirnama. I will admit, I really like the moment in the story where we get to see Chindana's soul POV. Though I don't think it erases my critiques of the handling of her arc, specifically with the sexism aspects, I do think her going to her own army and convincing them by herself did soften the blow of it. I still wish we could have seen her mind being changed by her own self-reflection rather than it being immediately after her fight with Nirnama, but them's the breaks. While Chindana is out there being a girl boss, Nirnama and Nadim need to watch a rooster fighting competition. It's another reference to another Malaysian folklore, don't worry about it. The big guy, King Bersiong, wins the rooster fighting competition, I am not saying cock fighting competition, by tricking his opponent, and Nirnama intervenes because if there's anything he hates, it's irresponsible monarchy. Janana appears with her army to back Nirnama up, and they both have a lovely time killing a sorcerer together. What's your ideal date? A cafe coffee hangout? A library study session? Or slicing a Pithiha's throat with your lover's blade? Comment down below! We cut back to Jabat, Alauddin, Kasturi, and Jinin getting closer to Jaga's borders to, you know, kill him. But surprise, Jagasuchi and his gang appear first to get him, and most surprising of all, Nirnama accepts Chindana's request for marriage. Truly equal levels of importance here. Yo, gang, I think Aladdin's soul is getting choked out of his body. Shut up, you're ruining the mood. While fighting with Aladdin, Jagasuchi reveals his demonic form in a billowing tower of smoke, a large black figure with horns and wings, his face decorated with long, sharp fangs. Oopsie, Daddy's home. And if you thought the surprises end there, well, baby, Jagasuchi just straight up brings Aladdin's dead parent back from the dead to make him surrender. Damn, he knows the classics. He's good. Nirnama interrupts and Jagasuchi is like, ooh, Nirnama, want me to revive your parents? And Nirnama is like, okay, bet. Alright, fine. So it turns out it's hard to find a jinn that knows the parents of a dude that is literally nameless to impersonate them. We get shown different fights between Nirnama vs Jagat, Jabat and Alauddin vs Sang Kalimbai, and Chindana vs Nujum Surya, and the last fight almost brings back the soreness I felt about the sexism topic after the previous chapter. Almost. But it did bring this banger. Nujum Surya trembled and looked up at Chindana. The Srikandi's gaze was as sharp as an eagle about to pounce on its prey. I just needed to buy time. As much as I could. Your arrogance made you careless of your surroundings, Chindana continued. You fought dirty. Nujum Surya managed to choke out in a feeble and broken voice. Gritting her teeth, Nujum Surya endured the pain coursing through her body. Her breathing became labored, and each breath felt as heavy as scaling a mountain. This is war, you damn witch! Chindana declared as she withdrew her kelewang from Nujum Surya's body, causing the old woman's lifeless body to collapse to the ground. Yeah, girly! That's what we like to see! After individually killing Nujum Surya and Sang Kalimbai, everyone can focus on helping Nirnama with Jagat. With the power of friendship and Allah by their side, they ambush Jagat-Suchi's demonic yet mortal form and slowly slice him up. In the end, the jinn by Jagat's side cower and run away, leaving behind the human they were using for their own selfish means. He is killed by Nirnama's Tamingsari and Chindana's Kelewang, and Jagat dies, afraid to face Allah for what he did. Everyone celebrates. But maybe it's time for Nirnama to have a little nap now, huh? It was truly interesting to follow your story. Khatima. Tinggi bukit gilang gemilang, air di laut tenang-tenangkan. Budi sedikit manakan hilang, itu nama kenang-kenangan. It's a beautiful day. It can only be accompanied by a beautiful wedding. After some talks of how great Islam is that could only bore a jinn like me, we finally get to the best part. It has now become official. Nirnama and Chandana are married. But their adventures aren't over yet. They both agreed to stay by each other's side till the end now, but that doesn't mean they need to stay in one place, do they? Lucky Nadim, he can still adventure with his older brother and sister. Good for them. So that was a ride, huh? I'll provide my critiques first before I get into what I liked, because I do want this to end on a good note. I promise after this bitter medicine I'll give a sweet little chocolate. I'll just jump into it because the video is most likely way too long already, so let's start my critiques with not really a critique at all. This book is very heavy-handed in its Islamic messaging, and I know Hilal Ashraf's whole thing is making Islamic stories, and he even said in the author's note in the end that he made this story with the intention of expressing the lessons of Islam and how great it is. I went into this book knowing that it has been advertised as a Malay Muslim fantasy. This quote-unquote critique is me biting into a sandwich and going, what the? This thing has bread in it! So, the heavy-handed messaging is not the problem. Actually, my favorite chapter that has Nirnama and Laudin arguing with each other is probably the most heavy-handed of all. I'm just saying it here because it's gonna be the first thing you notice about it. I will say though, it sometimes does get a little bit grating. Again, I used to go to an MRSM which focuses on Islam a lot, even with its more scientific schools. A lot of the things Nirnama talks about are just stuff that I've heard ad nauseum. Like in the early chapters, Nirnama tells Nadim the importance of doing sunnah prayers alongside the mandatory prayers, and it's like, what's next, dude? You're gonna tell me to gargle and brush my teeth before bed? What is this? I feel like this is more of a nitpick than a critique, though. Your mileage will vary, and this is very much a personal thing. I'm Malay Muslim, so I'm very used to these kinds of stories, talking about this kind of stuff. What isn't a nitpick, in my opinion, though, is the handling of the character arcs. Mainly the 2 out of the 3 of the main characters on the cover. I feel like I already got my point across at Chindana, but man, the sexism aspect of her story felt really clumsy. The issue that bugged me with it is, as I've said before, the pacing of it and how it felt like it wasn't explored enough for me. Her reasoning for thinking the way she does is because when she rallied her own army to fight back against Jagatsuchi, her own people didn't have confidence in her because she was a woman, so she left to prove that she could be the greatest Srikandi to gain that confidence. That's a legitimately good setup for her character, but then it felt glossed over in a way. Yeah, sure, she gets close with Nirnama and admires his way of life more, but that doesn't translate to her dropping her insecurities. Plus the phrasing of, men and women are meant to complement each other and not fight against each other. While it isn't negative, I guess, it doesn't really fit. Like, Chandana's whole thing is that she wanted to prove to people that she doesn't need a man, that she doesn't need to be a man to lead her army. So, why are you telling her, but men and women can be together, actually? It's like trying to put in a circle inside a square hole. Like, sure, I guess that works, but that's not the specific issue we're talking about, you know? And the reason why this handling kinda sucks is because due to putting so much energy into the sexism thing, her specific issues of insecurity just aren't brought up anymore. And that sucks. Yeah, Nirnama told her that she doesn't need to focus on the opinions of others, but like every insecure person knows that you can't just tell someone to stop being insecure. It feels kind of weird to not talk about it again. I mentioned in the recap her fight with Nujum Surya, the sorceress antagonist, almost brought back a lot of the soreness of the sexism part of her story even after the chapter where Chindana rallies up her army by herself. In that fight, Nujum Surya tries to do a, ooh, you can join us, you can have all the power in the world and prove to people that women are better. And Chindana replies with the whole women and men are meant to complement each other thing. And it's like, whatever. But in my opinion, I feel like that moment would have been much better if Chindana was more like, I don't care about that anymore. I've already proven myself. Also, you destroyed my entire kingdom. Fuck off. Also would have been nice to point out the obvious flaw in Nujum Surya's logic because throughout the entire novel, she's in a position of power, sure, but Jagatsuchi still treats her like garbage. They were fighting to be fair, but it would have been really funny if Chindana was like, you're literally the second fiddle to Jagatsuchi. You're just his dog. So that's Chindana, and then there's Nadim's whole thing with his ancestral and spiritual beliefs and one of Nadim's whole arc is that he goes from believing and praying to his ancestors and spirits to being a proper Muslim. And the way that is handled is not as clumsy as Chindana's sexism conflict. It's very much deliberate, but Ugh. I'm gonna make sure I don't speak out of bounds to the people that do have ancestral and spiritual beliefs here because while I sometimes call myself agnostic, I still primarily study Muslim beliefs. So if I happen to be crossing a line, I like for those people to call me out in the comments. To begin, I don't like how they do this thing where so many of the characters just go, "You silly goose. Remember when you believed in ancestors and spirits instead of Islam?" That's so quirky. Right after one conversation between Nadim and Nirnama about the existence of Allah and spirits, because there's this underlying implication that the belief in ancestors and spirits is really stupid, and Nadim shouldn't have thought that to begin with. Again, like the sexism thing, it feels like it's not being taken seriously and is resolved so quickly. And if we're not touching on the sensitivity issues on that, it's definitely an issue of character writing because there is actually so much potential in having Nadim express beliefs in ancestors and spirits. Cause answer me this, Herlock Sholmes. How did an orphan that grew up in a Muslim village form a belief in ancestors and spirits? Nadim talks about going to the masjid and hearing talks. He knows enough about Islam to know that he needs wudu to pray. How does he know about forest spirits? I don't know how young Nadim is supposed to be. I'm guessing like around the 15 age range because he does have that 15-year-old teen boy swagger. I think that it might be implied that he knows because he was born into a Jagat Suchi era, but Jagat Suchi calls himself a god, not that he's channeling the power of ancestors and spirits. I think Nirnama should have sat this kid down and asked him, how did you learn about this? Because knowledge and religion isn't something that you're born with, it's something that you learn. You know? So there's that logic issue, and then there's the other issue that it just feels weird that the only reason why Nadim starts leaning into Islamic beliefs is purely because of his admiration to Nirnama, because, quite frankly, that's a really bad thing to tell in your book that aims to tell people about the lessons of Islam. Maybe there was some self-reflection on Nadim's part over why he would choose Islam over ancestral beliefs, and I might have missed it, but when he does talk about it, it's because Nirnama taught me. And while I like the dynamic of an older sibling figure teaching a younger sibling their way of life, you shouldn't convert your religious beliefs because someone you like has that religion. Your religious beliefs are your own responsibility, and you should only do it because it feels right to you for whatever reason. Islam doesn't prevent religious freedom, so why is another character's belief in this Islamic book being treated this way? My complaints here are not rooted in a want of these topics to be erased or removed or censored or whatever you want to call it. I actually think that these topics should have been explored more. There are people like Chandana and Nadim, people who experience sexism within their religious groups, and people who initially had different beliefs before believing in Islam, who deserve to have their struggles to be represented with more respect and dignity. And it all comes from this root problem, and it's this need from the novel to make Nirnama, the main character, the most religious and faithful, the most correct person ever. Nirnama is never wrong about anything in this novel. He never loses either in a physical fight or in an intellectual one. Don't get me wrong, I don't think characters that are always correct are a bad thing. Reliable narrators are just as much of a writing tool for stories as unreliable narrators. And Nirnama's reliability is used pretty well in a lot of cases, but sometimes it feels like things like Chandana's and Nadim's stories are glossed over or hand-waved away for the sole sake of maintaining that reliability instead of just being a natural consequence. It feels like the narrative is scared to explore Chandana's and Nadim's thoughts seriously because it might make the reader realize that they might have a point. Because of that, some of the stakes just don't feel as high as they could be. Like in my favorite chapter when Nirnama is talking Aladdin into exiting his cave. While I like that Aladdin initially doesn't accept it, but ends up redeeming himself anyways, I feel like that moment could have been a lot more nail-biting if every conversation Nirnama had wasn't always in his favor. There are two things that happen when you talk to Nirnama about Islam. You either convert to Islam or you disagree and you die. And it's okay, because you were the villain anyways, and I'll talk about that with Tuha later. Just you wait. Of course Aladdin was going to listen to Nirnama in the end. Everyone that lived normally after Nirnama breathed in their general direction of converted to Islam. And maybe you think that because Nirnama has been correct in all of the discussion so far, that it made the Aladdin moment a lot more tense. But for me, I feel like it would have been better if there were some like resistance to Nirnama before that, because then you can set up the fact that Nirnama can fail, you know? And I feel like there's also just like missed potential for characterization because Nirnama is a bitch. I'm just kidding. I just like making fun of him because someone needs to. Nirnama has been alone for so long and has spent most of his life around people that had the same views as him, and here comes Chandana and Nadim who have very different circumstances than him. I just feel like it would be nice if Nirnama had a discussion with Chandana and Nadim where he goes, huh, why do these people have a point? There are scenes in the book where Nirnama admits that he's a normal person just like everyone else, so why isn't he treated like a normal person that can be wrong sometimes? I feel like the reason why this problem exists in this book is the reason why it's prevalent in other Malay Muslim books, and it's this fear, ignorance, that maybe, possibly, things other than Islam or Astaghfirullahalazim, critiques of the practices of some Islamic groups might be deserving of the same respect that Islam should get. I won't get into it here. I don't want it to seem like I'm blaming this on Hilal Ashraf because I don't know what his intentions are, and he does actually sometimes criticize the actions of some Islamic groups via Aladdin. But this is advice for just general Malay Muslim writers aiming to write Malay Muslim themed books. It's okay to be nuanced and gray sometimes. It's okay to portray your non-Muslim characters as sympathetic and maybe even correct. It's a book. The worst thing your words could immediately do is make someone feel uncomfortable and want to close it. Please, just sit down with a non-Muslim or even a Muslim that is different from you and see from their POV. If your belief is swayed just from talking to different people, then that's just fuel for your own self-reflection on your own end, really. See these people as people and not problems for Islam. As someone that has been broken down by his intolerant masjid, ustaz, and Muslim peers and family, I wonder if that fear and or ignorance is the reason why things go that far. So that's all my critiques of the books, but before I can get into the positives, because yes, there are positives in this book, as much of a negative Nancy I am being right now, there's still one more thing that I want to get into. It kind of still falls into the criticisms that I have for the writing, but it's about my favorite character, so it also kind of falls in the positive. It's in the middle somewhere. It also acts as a nice little chill down section before the positive section. If we go from hot to cold so quickly, I'm worried we'll go into thermal shock. Please, just a bit more medicine. The chocolate is coming soon. Tuha. Oh man. This section shall be called Tuha, my beloved. This is a section that has some heavy spoilers in regards to Nirnama's real name, so I recommend that if you still want some mystery to this novel, just go get it with the links I provide down below, or just skip straight to the positives of the novel. This is more like a character analysis on my part. Alright, 3, 2, 1, go! As I've explained at the very beginning, Tuha is a reference to Hang Tuah, a character from Hikayat Hang Tuah who is a legendary hero that may or may not have been real. Very much King Arthur vibes. He's like the hero figure icon. He even has a nice little sword thing. You might have already noticed from the recap that Hilal Ashraf turned this on its head by making Tuha one of the villains. And then, he surprises you again by revealing that Nirnama's real name is Tuah, and he gets to inherit the Taming Sari after Tuha's death. Tuha's name, being the way it is actually a reference to Professor Ahmad Adam's study on the inexistence of Hang Tuah, with one of the discussion pertaining to the spelling of the titular figure's name. Instead of Tuah, his name would have been Tuha or Toh or Tuah, apparently. So that's why Tuha's name is the way it is. I tried looking for primary sources of Professor Ahmad Adam's study of this, but I can only find articles and a whole lot of arguing, so... I lied. I'm sorry. Professor Ahmad Adam actually has a book called... what is it called? Antara 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 Sejarah dan Mitos, Sejarah Melayu dan Hang Tuah dalam Historiografi Malaysia. It's a study by Professor Ahmad Adam about the history of Malaysia and possibly even Hang Tuah, and goes about the whole entire thing. It's only in Malay, so but I'll link the book down below in the description anyways. Yeah. It's a really interesting reimagining of the whole thing, especially when you look into the detail of even the spelling of their names. Tuha's with the spelling that comes from a debate of Hang Tuah's existence, and Tuah's being the popular memory spelling. This detail especially coming from a book themed around finding falsehoods with truths, with Tuha on the villain side, while Nirnama is the hero. It's a detail that most likely means nothing, but it makes me think about Tuha a lot more than what the writer probably wanted me to. Tuha, the villain, is an interesting character to me, and I wonder if it's by accident. He was one of Nirnama's fellow brother disciples under Adiwaja. One would assume they have both been trained to fight back against Jagat Suci, and yet Tuha joined Jagat Suci's side. A lot of characters think that it's because he fell in love with Mount Ladang Princess, but I just simply don't buy it. Even before that, he used Sihir on a woman named Fatima because Sultan Mahmud was in love with her, but she didn't reciprocate. He didn't use Sihir to make her fall in love with Sultan Mahmud though. He supposedly made Fatima fall in love with him, and then he used Sihir to make her dislike him and fall in love with Sultan Mahmud instead. Why? Tuha is supposed to be a character that got corrupted by power and Siha, but what benefit does he get by doing all that? Not even mentioning the fact that it's convoluted as heck. Why? Why? This is like 5D chess level of nonsense here. He's a luck summoner, not a matchmaker, and apparently Sultan Muhammad wasn't even that pressed about it. If it was simply because Sultan Muhammad wanted her, he was only planning to betray him after he fell in love with Mount Ladan Princess. Why would he need to go so far to gain Sultan Muhammad's trust? Something is just not adding up here to me. At this moment, I just usually look to the correct guy Nirnama, but many times he also expresses confusion and uncertainty to how Tuha could have changed so much. So I feel like I can only really trust Tuha's explanation here. Tuha revealed, "Since we were young, Adiwaj's dogma has been instilled in us. We were never given the chance to question, but we cannot surpass our abilities as human beings and go beyond the realm of our existence. Lord Jagat the Holy speaks the truth, and I have witnessed it myself. To the Mount Ladong Princess, this world is greater than Islam. Allah is but a figment of our imagination, created only to scare us." He stared at Nirnama sharply. Nirnama glared at Tuha, his expression sharp. "Then it is true that you have strayed far from the truth, brother." "I have never become more enlightened. It is you who are lost, blinded by religion," Tuha retorted. Aladdin glanced at Tuha, hoping to find some shred of light. "You are the hope and inspiration of us all. Our Grand Master and the Ummah at large yearn for your strength. I bear witness to your upbringing, full of obedience and respect." Tuha objected. "I was once foolish and narrow-minded, believing that there was nothing beyond what I had. But now my eyes have been opened to the vastness of the world. Spare us your preaching. Nirnama has already done enough. I will not revert to my old ways, and I will prove it to you." And when you hear that, plus knowing the context that Aladdin, another fellow disciple, abandoned his kingdom and responsibility in the name of Islam, I started filling in the blanks myself, and I felt a connection with Tuha. I think he's meant to be a bit of a mirror to Aladdin's character. While Aladdin was overly devoted to his religion and focused so much on the beyond that he neglected the present living world, Tuha doesn't care for what's beyond and is more concerned with the learning more about the physical world. And in my own personal reading, he feels like a character who has given up on Islam. I mean, think about it. Tuha was raised with a heavily Muslim environment to prepare to fight against what he's been taught to be a terrible threat. But then his eldest Kakanda just left them after a fight with their master, leaving his family, his adinda, and his people in the name of some religion. Then Tuha had to leave Adiwaja to be under Aladdin's father, Sultan Mansud's wing, and after that had to work under Aladdin's younger brother, who is disappointing in his own way, and is a direct result of Sultan Mansur neglecting him. And this isn't a guess, by the way. Sultan Mansur admits he regrets he couldn't be there for Mahmud due to his responsibilities and, in some ways, his duties to Islam. It feels like to me, in my own personal reading of the character, that Tuha was tired of the disappointment that the religious people around him had given him, and in the end turned to sihr or other things that we won't know about. Something that gave him tangible results, and I could only imagine more comfort to him than his religion did. He didn't fall in love with Mount Ladang Princess in spite of her sihr, but most likely because of it. Ironically, he also ended up dying in the literal hands of the very thing that gave him comfort, if that was the case. And honestly, when you factor into Tuha's thing with Fatima and his affections with Mount Ladang Princess, it really shows that there was so much to unpack. He's a very mysterious character to me and ended up being someone that I connected with. I relate to being disappointed by my own religion again and again and again, and looking for something else to build my worldview on. I wish I got to know him more and hear how he got where he was. Too bad he's dead now. There's the prequel, I guess. And listen, Hilal Ashraf, if you're watching this somehow, my god, you took what I said so far really well if you are. I don't want you to revive him for no reason, right? So don't hear this as me asking for that, but my god, if Nirnama was more popular internationally, I just know in my bones that Tuha would be the most popular character. I know, you made this book to talk about how great Islam is, but do you have any idea how much people like a bad boy like Tuha? He was in his 20s when Nirnama was a kid and studying under Adiwaja, which would mean that he would be in his late 30s, early 40s, give or take, which obviously means teenagers on Twitter and Tumblr are going to be calling him baby girl for as long as they know him. He's really strong because he was one of the few that gave Nirnama a struggle, even if it was because of his sihr. But he's also really pathetic because he lost from being killed not by Nirnama, but by the Mount Ladang princess he's been kissing with. He's dark and broody, and every drawing of him makes it clear that not everything is up there, you know? I'm just saying, he's a prime Tumblr sexy man. I don't know whether or not my reading of Tuha is accurate, and quite frankly, I don't care. I already gave Hilal Ashraf my money, and that means I can think whatever I want. A lot of the Nirnama villains don't have very deep backstories, and I don't mind that, honestly. I do not care about why Sang Kalimba is the murderous way he is. That's just his thing. Though I do know now because I've read the prequel. But I guess with Tuha, I kind of would have expected a bit more because he's the Hang Tuah reference, man. Or at least part of it. I feel like it's another example of Nirnama the novel not really being able or willing to have the time to flesh out their characters a bit more. Again, reducing these characters to just problems and concepts rather than, as characters. I don't know if Hilal Ashraf just wasn't sure in the beginning whether or not he would be able to make another book, so all the bits in the novel that feels like it needs to move at a quick speed is because of that limitation for whatever reason it was established. To the point that a lot of things feel a bit glossed over and hand-waved away to keep up with the pace. The way I can describe this book is that it feels like 3 seasons worth of an anime crammed into an almost 700-page book. And 700 is a lot, but in the end, it can only fit so much. So I guess the only advice that I, a fanfic writer, can give is this. I guess pace yourself a bit more, man. Some things need to cook a little bit longer, and maybe the other ideas you want to explore can just be in a different book. I don't know. That's probably easier said than done, but it really feels like the stuff in Nirnama just needed more time. Like, chill, dude. We're on a walk, not a sprint. Also, I hope I see more Tuha in the comics. So I guess that concludes whatever section this is. I'm gonna go a bit off script here and mention the fact that while I have read the prequel, I haven't finished the entire book yet. I literally stopped right before the Tuha chapters. So yeah, just to let that out there for a second. I have read the Sang Kalimba part though. I now know why Sang Kalimba is the way he is. But again, I'm only reviewing this book as a standalone thing. I'm just going. I said I would be ignoring everything else, so I'm just going to ignore everything else. You feel? Alright. I promised this video would semi-end on a good note. Woo! We still need to talk about the different Malay and English versions later. But let's get the obvious out of the way first. The art is magnificent. I've shown them on the recap here, but my god, Nenek Hani does a good job. She specializes in drawing characters in traditional clothing, and you can really tell. It all has this kind of inky, sketchy feeling to them, and personally, I think that adds to it. Not going to lie, getting the English version to see just a bit more illustrations was unironically worth it for me. The ending illustration in the English version is also great. Look at everyone together! Ignore the fact that half of these people are dead and would definitely not be chill enough to stand next to each other like this. Even if you don't want to read the book but just want to see the art, there is an art book. I'm not sure if it's obtainable internationally, but it's there and I'm getting it no matter what it takes. Shout out to Nenek Hani. My god, bless your soul. It's not just Nenek Hani either. Asyraf Azulia did a lot of the location drawings in the novel apparently, and those are just bangers after bangers. By the way, older people watching this, a banger refers to a really good song, but in this specific case I'm saying the drawings are very good. Just want to use my young age to help educate the elderly, you know? Oh, and also Tuan Firdaus Bakar for drawing the map and beginning gateway at the chapter was also nice. As for the writing itself, I actually quite like the prose of the book, especially in the Malay version. I do feel like there is often repetition of some words and phrases, especially in fighting scenes, but the general dialogue to my tiny little brain is engaging. The usage of Bahasa Istana or palace language legitimately gets you feeling immersed in the world of Nirnama. You really do feel like you're in a fantastical olden Malaya going through a war, and that's pretty cool. I really like the usage of mythological folklore and how it was used as inspiration for the characters. I already talked about how it's used for Tuha and Nirnama, but my favorite usage of it comes from the Sarawak arc with Princess Sejinjang and Princess Atubong. For anyone that doesn't know the mythology, kinda goes the same way in the novel. Two twin princesses fall in love with the same guy, but in the mythology they both die. Seeing Nirnama take that concept but then recontextualize it in a way where both princesses get a happy ending instead was legitimately super cool to see, even if it was in a heavily Islamic lens. I'm a sucker for happy endings, and seeing the princesses happy makes me happy. This is the kind of stuff that makes me want to read the sequel of Nirnama, which, yeah, there is a sequel. It's set 10 years later, just to see what other mythology that Hilal Ashraf will be taking inspiration from next and how he would be reimagining them. It's all very cool. The action is pretty good. I think I don't really read much action, to be honest, when it comes to books specifically. I read more mystery thriller stuff than anything else, but I found myself being pretty engaged with almost all of the action scenes. The fight between Tuha and Nirnama is one of my favorite scenes, obviously. Tuha revealing his fire here and using it to get out of situations, while Nirnama has to hold out with nothing but his strength, was pretty cool. The fight really established the struggle between a good side having to fight against a bad side using literal magic. I feel like that was a concept that Hilal Ashraf did really well on. The Nirnama and Aladdin fight as well. My god, that was so good. Obviously, still not gonna spoil it because it's good. That's right, I'm gatekeeping in this review. Sue me. My favorite action scene actually does have to go, to the surprise of many I'm sure, to the Chandana versus Nirnama fight on the boat. I really liked how the fight just so thoroughly showcased Chandana's and Nirnama's differences in personalities so well. Chandana's graceful moves that involve using her scarf and small weapons to whittle Nirnama down being contrasted by her loud taunts and voice, alongside her clear showcase of determination, just made me fall in love with her character in that very chapter. Then to see it immediately followed up by Nirnama's much more silent and calm responses and being accompanied by his devastating powerful blows that come much more slower but are more grounded in a way, it just felt really good to see the two clash. And while I don't like the topic surrounding that fight, I still commend it for how much it showcases Chandana's and Nirnama's dynamic. I liked it so much, I was legitimately so disappointed when Chandana surrendered in the Sarawak competition. Like, no! Beat the shit out of each other again! And speaking of dynamics, my god, I just adore Nirnama, Nadim, and Chandana together. The banter and teasing between the three just warms my heart to an illegal degree, even when it's some pretty small interactions in the grand scheme of the novel. The three just complete each other so well, and I crave so much more of it. Nirnama being the calm, responsible older brother that is trying to make sure that nobody gets killed 90% of the time, Chandana being a lot more down-to-earth, relaxed, and friendly than Nirnama is, while also being the more stubborn and passionate, makes her a great pair of him, and a fun older sister to Nadim who respects them both and hypes them up every chance he gets, while also being the one to make fun of them in some situations. Because he's also the strategist of the trio, which makes him fit just as much as the straight man of them all. Also, Nadim doesn't have the same amount of baggage as having a lot of people die because of Jagatsuchi, so there's some extra comedy points there. They're just such a solid trio, and Hilal Ashraf, I don't know if you'd ever want to hear a suggestion from me, a nobody, but I am telling you right now, dude, if you make a comic set right after the first book and it's just the adventures of Nadim, Nirnama, and Chandana, you advertise that to an international audience, I promise you, they will love it. They eat found family dynamics up like hungry feral dogs being presented with a steak. I would legitimately love to see just more stuff of these three. If nothing else kept me going, just the chance of seeing these three interact with each other in any way was enough. As for Nirnama's and Chandana's romantic relationship, while I don't like how it started and the pacing of it may have been a bit too quick for some people, it is admittedly the highest form of comedy for me to see religious boy Nirnama stumbling his words and getting all blushy around Chandana. The final illustration of the two is also admittedly really cute. Romance like this seems to be Hilal Ashraf's bread and butter based on his previous work, so it tracks. I don't know if it needed to be there, but it's not that I would want it removed either, so it's inoffensive to me. Whenever Nirnama gave Islamic advice, it would often trigger memories of my religious trauma, but when he said it to Nadim and Chandana, I could associate it less with the words that were used to hurt me and see it more as an older brother figure just looking out for his two partners in traveling, and that made it feel a little bit better. I really do honestly yearn for that interaction and connection that people have with each other through religion, but I just never feel like I can really belong in those spaces anymore. Nirnama, Nadim, and Chanana showed me that warmth people can have with each other that Islam can provide, and that was a lot more healing than I thought it would be. Speaking of healing, I actually do think that Nirnama, in the smallest way, has helped me at least untangle some of my religious trauma. Seeing the characters being able to face a human masquerading as a demon with full bravery because of their faith made me reflect on my own beliefs at least a little bit. The people that perpetuated the trauma I faced used Islam a lot to dismiss the hurt they were causing. They made me feel like I wasn't talking to humans, but with authority that I was lesser than for some reason. But in Nirnama, it felt less like a dismissal and more of a way to comfort me. It's okay to be scared. We're all normal humans, but you don't need to be. Allah is the only one you need to be scared of, and He takes good care of all of us. We're all just humans, even the ones that hurt you badly, and you can always fight back. There was one moment in the book that I had to walk away from because it felt like it addressed one small aspect of my religious trauma, and for once it made me feel like I could actually go back to spirituality. I never felt like I could go back to being as religious as I was because I haven't really done as many things that a Muslim should. I haven't touched the Al-Quran in a while because the texture of its pages bring me back to sitting in the masjid while the ustas that joked about sexually harassing girls would preach to us about taking care of our modesty. I haven't prayed in a long while because it brought back memories of it being used as a punishment for me. I get scared even thinking about doing it. I don't feel like a real Muslim anymore even in times when I truly believe in Allah. But then Adiwaja says this to Nirnama when Nirnama questions him why he was trying so hard to involve and connect with other people when teaching Islam after Alauddin left. Adiwaja explains that it's important to think about other people, that being Muslim means more than just the mandatory things you need to do. He says this: "You must heed my words and follow them as though your life depends on this. This religion does not teach egocentrism. It goes beyond the borders of the prayer mat and masjid. This religion surpasses the intricacies of rituals and worship. It is a way of life. As vicegerents, it is our responsibility to guide life on earth to coexist peacefully and submit to Him." He nodded in agreement. "Never confine your perspective within a narrow understanding of religion. Embrace it in its entirety. Do not pick and choose what you like and reject what you do not. This religion is a blessing for all worlds, not just for oneself," Adiwaja advised. And the reason why this is important to me is that it felt like a confirmation that I could go back. I could still be called Muslim as long as I applied this religion in other ways. That is not just something to torture myself with constant guilt and shame. It is more than what the people in my life have taught me, and maybe that I've always still been a practicing Muslim, just not obviously. When I first finished this book, one of my first critiques was going to be criticizing the concept of wanting to teach Islam through a fantasy novel. And what I was going to say was, if someone was going to learn about the religion, why don't they just read the Al-Quran? But after pondering on it a bit, I think the answer is simple. You should still read the Al-Quran. Seriously, please get your information of religion from the actual religious text. Like, gang, please, I'm being so serious. What are you doing? But the reason why someone would read a book themed around Islam is for the same reason that someone would play Faith rather than read the Bible. It's fiction, and fiction gives us a chance to see how faith can interact with somebody's life without it affecting you, to be able to put you in situations and stories without the hurt that comes with it. It's a book. The most immediate effect that it can cause is make you want to close it. Do I feel like Nirnama takes full advantage of this? Not all the time. I did spend a lot of time complaining about Chindana and Nadim's handling, but when it does get it right, it gets it right, and I do feel a sort of comfort from it, which one would argue is a pretty important part of fiction. I have a lot of critiques on it, but there's a charm to this novel, and I thankfully didn't find it a waste. At least it was better than Cabaret. Sorry, I just had to fit it in there somehow. We are not done yet, somehow. So, should you buy the English version or the Malay version? I'm going to assume that you can understand both languages. Otherwise, I don't know why you'd consider this question. As I've mentioned, I do like the prose in the Malay version much better than the English. In my opinion, the English version did feel a bit more casual and a bit basic, but that might be a plus for you because I understand that not many people, not even Malays, are really comfortable with this type of bahasa, especially some usage of Istana bahasa. So even if you know Malay but you just don't want to wreck your brain for this type of bahasa, then maybe it'd be better to get the English version. The English version unfortunately still has some issues with its translation. The biggest one at some point in chapter 6 in page 140 of the English version, it mistranslated Tanggang's backstory from him leaving his parents at the age of 15 to him leaving his parents 15 years ago. You can tell that it's a mistranslation because like a page after that, Tanggang's parents talk about how he hasn't come back for 30 years, and I'm no mathematician, but I don't think that's how time works personally. There's another small mistranslation in chapter 7, page 164, where the page described Janin as shouting when he wasn't. So far, those were the only mistranslations I picked up. I think I found one misspelling of a word and one mix-up of a pronoun. It just used her for Nirnama once, which is very funny to me, so I don't even count that as a mistake. I didn't even save that, but it was there, and that'll be fun for you guys to find. He, her pronouns for Nirnama is canon, guys. If you decide to get the English version, just keep in mind it might get clunky in some areas. The English version also has some extra content, like in the end, there's a section talking about the inspirations of the characters that aren't in the Malay version and a fanart showcase. There's also a few extra illustrations, and some chapters start differently, like in chapter 3. There's some added content of Jagat Suci eating a woman and killing her father before continuing with what the Malay version started with. It's not enough changes to the point where the story felt different to me in the English version. I'm guessing stuff was just added because the English version did get rid of some of the prose in the Malay version from translating it, which made it more concise. So I assumed that the added stuff was just to make the two versions the same length. Ideally, I'd say read the Malay version first and then the English version because you can enjoy the small bits of added content. But if you can only get one version, if you don't care about the extra content and want to read it without the mistranslation stuff, you can just get the Malay version. And if you want a more casual read or some extra drawings, you can get the English version. Just be mindful of some of the mistranslation mistakes. That's not Hilal Ashraf's fault though, that's Amin Misran's fault, so blame him instead. Hi, hello, it's me again. I should say something real quick. I know it sounds like I'm being very critical of the translations and in turn being very critical of Amir Misran's like work. But let it be known that I do commend his work. Like translating is very hard. If you told me to try to translate one page of the original Nirnama into English by myself, I'd rather kill myself. So I do commend Amit Misran's work. You know, like it's very good work. I just wanted to say because I sounded very critical, but having a translation is better than having no translation at all. So yeah, I do yeah. It's good work. It's really good work. But I do know there are some people that are very picky about that. Um, I do think that there's like a prose to the Malay version that is lost if you only read the English version. But yeah, that's my thing. Sorry, Mr. Misran, if you're watching this video, sorry that I hyper focused on like a few translation mistakes. Sorry. So, conclusion? If anything that was said here interested you at all, go get the book yourself. The ebook is available on Amazon for $10 and it's also available on Shopee to get the physical book. There's a lot of good and charm in it, but I really do feel like it could have benefit from taking its time a bit more. I would still recommend this book, but not without heavy caution on some of the more difficult topics like sexism and different belief systems. After spending some time letting this book sit with me though, I found myself finding comfort in it, and I know a few people that would love a book like this, so it gets some points there. I slightly changed up a lot of the characters' personalities in my recap for comedy's sake, so if you want the full proper experience, you should go and get the book in any way you can. A lot of books will need you to sit down with it and to take it seriously for a while before you can properly get immersed in it, and this book is no different. If you're willing to take a while to compromise and get to Nirnama's level, maybe you'll find yourself enjoying the novel's company as well. Not everyone will have that willingness, mileage will always vary, and another important aspect of Islam is not forcing people, so it's okay. If you can, read the first 5 chapters that are on for free, and if you want to read more, get the book. I'm not sure how long this video will take, probably way after the sequel comes out, and I don't know if I'll ever read and review the sequel, but I will probably get into it at some point. Hilal Ashraf mentions that he hopes that this book can reach international audiences, and I guess I'll have to pray for that to happen as well. If only because it'll get me more Tuha content. Please! My boy! He's just a little mentally ill. If there's any other Malaysian book that y'all would want me to review in more videos like this, suggest them in the comments down below. I had so much fun writing this video and I really want to make similar stuff again. Anyways, this video is long enough and I won't waste any more of your time. Like, subscribe, do all the things YouTubers ask you to do. If you like the art I made, I have commissions open and a Ko-Fi where I post exclusive art on there, and you can get a cute little chibi if you want it when you get memberships. And plus, your name gets to be read out at the end like this. Thank you to Kaiser, Legion, and Dekas for the recent memberships. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Stay safe, my foresty friends.